Thanks again for staying with me on the show, TMI Monday. We begin our discussion segment by looking at recent comment made by world's second richest man, wealthiest man, talking about Bill Gates. Of course, he was in the country last week, and he picked some holes in our budget structure, the state of the Nigerian economy, saying even though investing in physical infrastructure is good, but what is most important is to look at human capital development. And that's our take-off point. I'm being joined now by a veteran journalist, media entrepreneur, former lecturer, broadcaster, politician, Dr. John Pedro Obaseki. Doc, many thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good morning.
When over the years, one major thing we always talk about as it relates to the economy is that the need for our budgeting to be reworked in such a way and manner that we have more on infrastructural development. People will say capital expenditure is very poor. I mean, we need to have more monies to fund road projects, build schools, build construction and stuff like that. But this comment made by Bill Gates doesn't seem to be in tandem with that, notion that we have held over the years. I don't know what you make of that as a starting point.
You see, the world has transited from an analog setup to a digital setup. The world has transited from just being a product, a world that was the product of the British Industrial Revolution, into a more digitized empowerment of the individual. Because the truth of the matter is, roads are roads, but for who? Infrastructural development for Nigeria, using that as the benchmark or as the bedrock of our budgeting, has always been wrong ab initio. It's been wrong in the sense that, one, to create wealth is not to build roads. Human capital development is tangential to making any progress in any part of the developed world. Nigeria had palm produce factories before Malaysia even planted one palm kernel. But Malaysia developed their human capital, the use of those palm kernels. How do you add value? Roads don't add value. Roads always have, every infrastructure always have a depreciation value. Once you buy a car, the day you buy that car is a capital investment. But the very day you buy that very car, if you take that car back to a workshop to sell, it is second-hand. But when you enhance the person's or the environment, life is about heredity and environment. When you enhance the human capital, the maximal or optimal use of available infrastructure will be enhanced. And that is, when I read what Bill Gates wrote, I shook my head. And that is all about governance. The ethos of governance has to change. The manner and way at which people aggregate progress to things government must provide as part and parcel of its contract with the people is being seen by certain people as things to put on billboards. That is narcotizing. It's like pumping the economy with, let me use the slang, Igbo. So you are narcotizing the people, narcotizing the economy. Those jump starts don't work. But if you take a young man, the Nigerian army used to do it, when you take a young man and you create an environment for him to thrive, you don't need to give him a job. He will create jobs. He will have had the verve, the wherewithal, the presence of mind to be able to navigate within the space he has for himself, how to create a better him. And once you create a better him and everyone is a better person, you've created a better, larger society. Because all of us are sum totals of the larger whole. So if each component of the whole works perfectly, it's like cybernetics, like a car engine. Each component works perfectly.
Yeah.
So that moves everybody forward. So when I read it, I shook, and when I also read comments, particularly on the social media, by government apologists on all sides of the divide. I shook my head and said, where are we heading to? Now let's take America, for example. America is a nation of 50 countries. The United States of America, California was a nation on its own. New York was a nation on its own. Before they all came together after independence and said, let's be a nation altogether. Now, in Oregon or in Ohio, the per capita income or the purchase power parity is different from the guy in California. So in California, they decided there is no single mineral resource in Nevada, in Las Vegas. But they decided to invest in human capital. They created the Silicon Valley, where all computers, all software manufacturing, where people make money by not building infrastructure. Facebook is an online infrastructure that exists nowhere. Really, it's in cyberspace. Yeah. So it's virtual. You get my point? So they created that, and it has become, California today is the world's 5th largest economy. That is after the United States, after China, after Germany and Japan. California as a state in the United States has a greater GDP than the United Kingdom, has a greater GDP than France. But it is just 1/50 in a country, because there is an opening up of that space. So if you want to talk about vehicles, you'll be looking at Detroit. You'll be looking at all motors in the United States at a particular point in time, whether you are Ford, Chevrolet, you are in Detroit. When it comes about television, you are in New York. So there is an identification of the human capital verve and the valve, and that is pumped up. In Nigeria at the time, in the 50s, between 1951 and 1957, when Awolowo was the main person in the Western region, he pushed forward free education at all levels. But that free education was based on a £1 across-board tax to every adult male in Western region, including the present Edo and Delta State. That created a new vista. The man created Cocoa House. The man created the first broadcasting service in Nigeria, because human capital was moved forward. They took over the judicial space. All the first 5, 6 chief justices of the Federal Republic of Nigeria were Yorubas, because their human capital has been so pushed up that you cannot ignore it. Yeah. So that is the thing. When human capital is pushed, particularly in Nigeria, where we are the most, I told anybody, we are the most resourceful black people on planet Earth. You cannot talk about the progress of medicine in the United States without mentioning an African in Nigeria. You cannot talk about, if the other day I was shocked to find that one of those who designed the last space rocket is a Nigerian. The man who solved the equation that makes the internet run faster is a Nigerian. You know, so the best kid in the United Kingdom, children, a set of children, are Beninese. So why don't we pump into capital, human capital development? And that will also free government. Okay, there's a saying in our place, say, it is good to build a house close to person when you get money, so that when NEPA sees light, when you on the generator, you go still shine, join your side. But that just means that once there is an empowerment process, yeah, you have more or less tangentially moved the economy forward by government not necessarily dispensing money. When I was younger, the owner of this station was, people don't call him that anymore. When I was younger in the 70s, they called him exemption. Because of of his investment in the human capital. As at that time, there was absolutely nothing new that was coming into this part of the world that was not having an Ibinedion insignia. So the local council of the Oba then, Arkansas, exempted him from all local taxes. So his guy name was exemption. So, but at that time, Hino Motors, the first time they started assembling lorries in Nigeria was by him. Yamaha, I still remember the song, Hino Motors, for durability. I was a kid, you know. So and all that thing, making the second owner of private beverage brewery in Nigeria, outside of Ibru, who started Pepsi, was Canada Dry. That's where you get Okada Dry.
Yeah.
So now, if you look at it now, look at those persons, Iyayi and Co, Odia, they are gone. Look at the man that had poetry, the Isa man. You know, they are gone. Because there is no creation of an enabling environment for human minds to fecundate. So people are involved in trying to exist rather than in trying to live.
What do you make of the impact of policies that could foster that kind of environment for human capital development? Because that seems to be the core of the issue.
It has to be top down, not trickle. It has to be top down. That's the trickle effect, top down, not bottom up. So policy creation is not that of the common man on the street. It's not that of civil society to agitate. It's policy creation is based primarily on vision leadership. On leadership that has a vision. And then they will not take the entire nation on that mission to achieve that vision. Because dream, now only one person, if you dream, only one person can actually incubate a dream. Once you get that dream, I mean, I cannot dream the same dream like you did, but it is now part of leadership to make everybody latch onto that dream. So if the dream is to create a Nigeria, you know, Nigeria has always set goals for itself that it never meets. When I was younger, it was the year 2010. It was the year 2000. Water for all by year 2000. Now we are 18 years past that year 2000 now. The water for all has been created by ourselves for ourselves. You know, the nation no longer has what do you call it? Pipe-borne water projects anywhere.
Yeah.
But that is a tangential role of government. So in those days, people campaign, we shall build roads and we shall provide pipe-borne water.
Yeah.
Now nobody provides pipe-borne water. All of us have our own water board. We have boreholes at home and we sell water on the street. Water is being sold in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a vision leadership, there is the propensity for policy direction. There is the propensity for the achievement of those goals that would ab initio bring to the fore the environment for which you create better policies for the people. And once the people see a good policy, not a policy that seems to hound them, like, I'm very sorry, I'm from Edo State, so I can run away from it. We are in Benin. When you have a situation whereby we are being pushed by motor packed out, beaten into line to obey things as simple as traffic lights, beaten into line to just get the basics of civic education and behavior, you will now have a very huge crisis in our hands. We have an attitudinal crisis, and that crisis can only be solved by visioned, insistent, persistent leadership. Because once the head is off, what is left with the body? You know, if there is visioned leadership, a leadership of belief. You remember Murtala Muhammad? I, as a student of history, I look back and I don't really like him. But at the time, there was a seeming vision to put Nigeria on a straighter path. Yeah. When the old thing about the change mantra was premised on a seemingly disciplinary disposition of the present president, when he was a military head of state. But a few of us who were already, I was an undergraduate, I was in the university there, I knew what we who were in the university suffered. Our perception of Buhari was quite antithetical to the perception by those who remarketed him to the Nigerian society. So, but that marketing was easy because there was a perception of a man who had a drive for good policies, straightforwardness, and stuff, not what we are faced with today.
Okay, let me pause you there. Just let our viewers know that we also have Barrister Friday Ogerahi joining this discussion. He is a former member of the Edo State House of Assembly and is also a politician. But Stefano Giraki, thanks for joining us on the program. Well, as we always say, the discussion really this morning is to look at issues holistically, not necessarily from political lineages or political perspective, because that seems to be the crux of the matter. When people see the truth, rather than say it the way it is, we want to look at it from political perspective. Well, if I say the way it is, what would my leaders say? What would that person say? Probably the job that I've been angling for may never get to me. I mean, the society that we're living now can't move forward. Nothing really will change. We'll just be in that state where it's as though there is motion, actually, but there is no movement. Bill Gates is the second richest man in the world, and in his wealth,
Mr. Bill Gates said the country will do better with strong investment in health and education rather than concentrating on physical infrastructure to the detriment of human capital development. Mr. Gates made the call today alongside the chairman of the Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, at a special session of
Nigeria recently, and of course admonished the Nigerian government, the Nigerian people, to look at human capital development as the best resource that we can use to drive Nigeria to where it ought to be. Even though infrastructure development and all of that, they are good. So that's the focus of our discussion. But you saw a bit of Bill Gates there. We'll just go back to that clip. Let's hear from him, and then we'll be back in the studio to talk more on this issue. Once again, thank you for joining us on TMI.
Mr. Bill Gates said the country will do better with strong investment in health and education rather than concentrating on physical infrastructure to the detriment of human capital development. Mr. Gates made the call today alongside the chairman of the Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, at a special session of the National Economic Council held at the Old Banquet Hall of the Presidential Villa, Abuja, with the theme Role of Human Capital Investment in Supporting Pro-Poor and Economic Growth Agenda. The council, chaired by the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, was attended by the 36 state governors, relevant ministers, and the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria as members. Mr. Gates said available statistics show that the country still looks like a low-income country and described Nigeria as one of the most dangerous places in the world to give birth. Nigeria and the Bill Gates Foundation thereafter signed the Memorandum of Understanding. The co-chair of Bill Gates Foundation, Mr. Bill Gates, and others shed more light on the session.
Of course, we're focusing on routine immunization, and the opportunity here is really fantastic. Vaccinations are phenomenal in their impact. If you have a child that's 6 weeks and you compare a child that does not get vaccinated with one that does get vaccinated, the unvaccinated child is over twice as likely to die. And so there are literally, in the years ahead, millions of deaths that we can prevent by doing good work on routine immunization.
I can proudly say that the MOU in Sokoto State has been reasonably a success and is a work in progress. We are therefore committed to the just signed MOU in letters and in spirit, and I assure you that funds from the state.
Okay, you heard from the horse's mouth talking about Bill Gates on the need for Nigeria to look at human capital development. Let me get Mr. Friday Giraki involved. Before you join us, we're looking at the issue of policies and programs of government as it affects human capital development. We've always believed that you agree with me as a former legislator, perhaps one of the challenges at that level will always be how do we make more monies available for capital investment, as it were, or capital budget, as it were, as against recurrent expenditure. Because over the years, we've always seen a situation wherein recurrent expenditure outweighs capital expenditure. But I'm thinking from the position of Bill Gates, in as much as we're doing well in terms of improving capital expenditure, we need to also look at human capital development. Let me get your buy-in to that. Yeah.
Thank you very much once again. I need to make this Gates have been telling us as a people is beyond whether we are making budgetary allocation or appropriation or capital development as against current expenditure, which one should be more or which one should be less. The simple message that I can garner from that statement related to the gate is the fact that our government need to make the people a lot more central to its policies and programs. That in your focus towards developing the country, the people must be number one, people must be number two, people must be number three. Because even when you want to build infrastructure, be it roads, be it railway system, be it infrastructure, air transportation infrastructure, as the case may be, whatever infrastructure that you want to talk about, it is all about the people. But what we have seen, to put it that way, which the gate reiterated, is the fact that the people, their interest is not so much captured in whatever program or economic recovery policy that this government has put in place. Even before now. Because you talked about the need not to be partisan. You cannot ascribe partisanship to a brigade, for instance. He has nothing perhaps to gain, from the society called Nigeria, one way or the other. If he chooses to be diplomatic with his words, that is a man that has made huge fortune from being able to apply himself to a world economy. So that if he has come here to now tell us this is the way it is and this is the way it should go, the best we can do is to also sit down as a people and look at that statement objectively, other than now, more or less, like it has been reported, say, oh, maybe the opposition have instigated this. It's ridiculous. At this point that we find ourselves, international world economy and international politics, we cannot afford the luxury of looking at economic issues from the narrow prism of political knowledge or affiliation. And that is why if we choose not to listen to an ambassador, if we choose or we can afford not to listen to even notable Nigerians, we cannot afford to derive a statement coming from the personality and brigade. Actually, given that the forum with which he made that remark was even one that was organized by the government itself. They call it National Economic Council meeting enlarged.
Yes.
They brought him. Perhaps the expectation was that the man would be diplomatic with his words.
It was just
and I can tell you, I've been in government before. It might even be that was organized for some other pecuniary reason. Maybe in the course of time, the will tell them,
you are doing well.
Oh, you are doing well, we are going to support you. The foundation will give money for you. You understand?
Yeah.
But the man has told them one thing, which is fundamental, that government all over the world must be people-oriented and people-centered. Whatever you are doing. Now, the question will arise, has this government actually put the people at the center of its economic policies? This country, whether we like it or not, no matter the word they want to use, whether economic recession, whether austerity measure, this country makes money by the seconds from a mono source, and that is oil. Oil has always been an all high demand situation in the world market. We make money by the day. How has that money translated to the welfare or the improvement of the welfare of the people. So that today you will agree with me that the government of the day do not know how about 98% of the population survive. I met my big brother here making the point in very practical way when he was talking about whether this government still know that people need to drink water. Whether this government still know how many of us have access to potable water supply.
Well, but quite frankly, Barrister Friday Geraki, you also agree that some of these issues that you mentioned, I mean, referring to Dr. Don Pedro Basiki, they've always been there. The issue of potable water has always been there for such a long time. Yeah. So we cannot really talk about that in relation to the present government. No, yeah. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the challenge has always been there.
That's the point we are making.
Yes.
I want to also say that Bill Gates necessarily was not also referring to this government alone.
Yeah. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. I think they were talking about the future and perhaps the future and perhaps the past.
Yes.
On the way to go.
Yes.
We want to see a government now that will be serious about accurate population or census figure. Do this government know how many Nigerians that are unemployed and how they survive? If you want to deal with the issue of insecurity, criminality, you want to deal with insurgency of whatever, by whatever name or nomenclature, you must also deal with the issue of people having hope about tomorrow, knowing and be secure in the belief that their next meal
is assured.
Okay, let me pause you there. Let me pause you there, Mr. Okiraki. I'll come back to you in a moment. Dr. Don Pedro, yes. The central focus of Bill Gates' statement at that National Economic Council meeting in last, like Mr. Friday Geraki said, is on human capital development. I was shocked. Well, maybe. Yes, I was, because I heard a statement like Nigeria is the second worst place or the worst place in the world to give birth.
Yeah, to give birth, yes.
To give birth. That was quite striking. That was quite striking.
You see, the Nigerian government, he talked about figures and sensors and stuff. You see, without statistics, you can't move anything forward. And nobody can know more who is not a practicing medical statistician than Bill Gates. I told my friends, Bill Gates will go to heaven because Jesus Christ said that whatsoever you do to the least of my brethren, you do unto me. Bill Gates is the reason why Nigerians buy artesunate for 300 naira. That is not the cost. He has paid for the cost of malaria drug application in the entire tropical Africa. Now he's gone into polio vaccination, treating people he doesn't know. Now, in Nigeria, calm down, the biggest problem is primary health care dispensation. And the second is the threat, infant mortality rate and birth mortality rate. And they find out that when he said Nigeria is one of the second, third worst countries to give birth, it is not a lie. We are a bit economical with the truth sometimes, based on which side of the divide we are on. Our state government, for example, has a launched hospital that was launched in fanfare by the president of this country in 2016. This is 2018. No fly had even had the opportunity to fecundate on dispensed bandages in that place. That is the height of government rascality. A stupendous dispensation that showcases brigandage. My friend in Gedemiko called it, he doesn't say it now because it's in that side, Oyism. That is an entrenched thievery roguery based on the soul-reading backs of the poor. Now we are talking about women. There is no particular drive in this country apart from you get a first lady somewhere or a wife of a state governor somewhere comes with another little scheme and carry women, they bandit it and they forget it. But until you are a nation that puts its women down cannot move forward. A nation that does not take charge of harnessing the infant, of his infants, cannot move forward. We will be like Igbahwan, Abiku, a nation bonded. That is what we face. And on the streets, people are so, I used the word at the beginning, narcotized. We are like a race that has been given series of tramadol and Igbo. So we just pretend things are all right. Within the sanctuary of our locked doors, we are screaming. But when you come out in the public, like you said when you were introducing Honorable Barrister Ogireke, nobody wants to say it so that there will be, because he doesn't want his next job, he doesn't know where he's going. Until they lose that little mentality, that's low level. Because if you, I keep telling you, this your program was when I said so that you cannot move a people forward if you don't move their brain power upward. Nigeria will not change as a state until Nigerians change their state of mind. And once you change your state of mind, you will be seeing the words of Bill Gates as a God-sent pricker, a trigger for government to change its ways. For government as a government, I mean at all levels, local, state, and federal. And why the state and federal are tangential is that they have the muscle. It's not about legislating. Because government can legislate, an assembly can legislate an act. We have an act now that has not, they are dilly-dallying. You know, and even if that bill is passed and is law, it is imperative on the executive to execute it and make it come to pass. There must be a seismic paradigm shift in the way Nigerians perceive themselves and perceive government. And government is a failure when it cannot dispense hope. He mentioned it. Hope is the thing government dispenses, not money. Because God has given all of us the power to create wealth. And I think that if you create the enabling environment for human capital development, let me give you an example. You are a private broadcaster today. But you may not remember, I mean, you might have read it in your broadcasting school, how we got to here. It's by default. But an individual sitting in the lagoon room when the coup of Gideon Oka took place, and he changed his PhD thesis from writing on Shoyinka to writing on private broadcasting in a developing economy as the answer to coup d'etats. And that man is sitting here. That is human capital development. God just did that one by default. Are you getting my point? I've told you how the Awolowo deliberately took over the judicial space, the broadcast space, by insisting on free education at all levels. Ambrose Ali, all the schools in Edo State today that are not private, outside of the ones that were owned and created by the missionaries and Ogbemudia, every other one is Ambrose Ali. The free education. When I was growing up, Idia College was one huge school that went from Wire Road to Ruby. The man split it. And now there are two different schools providing services for children. Imagwero, they check. In Edo State, a state so inundated with men who had heads, men who had brains in their heads. We used to laugh, they said, Midwest or Bende, when men were men and women were won by those who deserve them. Now, all the men are lavishing on Alomo, thinking of the next bottle of beer, and the women are all over the place, not seeing a man that deserves them. That is the problem we have in this state. And the government is economical with its thinking, because you cannot give what you don't have. If Buhari ain't got it, he ain't got it.
Okay, let me pursue that, because just on the verge of wrapping up this discussion. But I'd like to get your take on the issue of Nigeria being the worst place to give birth. Like we heard Bill Gates say, in that report that we play. And I'm very glad that we are looking at this issue dispassionately without political leaning, because that seems to be what we need to do more often, so that people
Mr.
can really
Bill
get
Gates said the country would do better with strong investment in health and education rather than concentrating on physical infrastructure to the detriment of human capital development. Mr. Gates made the call today alongside the chairman of the Dangote Foundation, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, at a special session of the National Economic.
People have talked about, well, let's go back to regional system of government where everybody looks inward to see what area of strength that you have that you can harness and stuff like that. You convene the Midwestern movement. Yes. I'm sure all of those agitations are along the way. But let me get your buy into this by Friday Geraki quickly.
Well, I want to join my brother to say God bless the Gates.
God bless the Gates.
For telling us what we have already known. Two practical situations I will use to illustrate what the Gate told us. I don't want to say what the Gate told Buhari. You have heard of adolescent girls who get pregnant for one reason or the other, selling their babies in this country.
Yes.
You think if they have the means and the support of a responsible government, they will willingly want to carry a baby
and they sell the baby
and sell it. One way. The second situation is where you have the kind of competition, so to speak, among the elites of this country who get pregnant and will prefer to go abroad and deliver. America, Europe. Because of the fact that they have no confidence in the system at home. And what is more tragic is the fact that when you find even wives of ministers of health, even female commissioners, we have had that in this state.
Female commissioners
when
of health.
Female commissioner of health in this state got pregnant and preferred to go deliver in America. We have had that. So if the gate now comes around to tell you, oh, this is about the worst place you can give birth to babies, will you now stand to contradict him or to debate the issue? So the reality stare us in the face. But what we have a system that pays lip service to what they call a high mortality rate. They pay lip service to it. Propaganda, no matter how well orchestrated, can never take the place of
truth
and facts on the ground. You might make sweet song about immunization. You might make sweet song about you want to reduce mortality rate in this country. But the reality, as we have it, is that we have not seen that seriousness about government saying this much money we will put for prenatal.
You know, I am a
this much money we will put for antenatal.
My first wife died at childbirth.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Now, why do you have to play politics with healthcare provision? What is the policy trust about ensuring that when women get pregnant, they want to procreate, their life is not in danger? Because the gate is coming from a very responsible society. And how do you measure responsibility? How do you measure civilization? It is the way you treat human life. How much premium you place on human life? How do you treat those who are coming to this world? And how do you also treat those that are going? How do you ensure that at the time people are born, the risk of their dying, let us speak, is minimized to the barest level? So that is simply what the Gate was talking about. We met, some of us were born in dispensaries, built by colonial masters. So that some of the bricks of those dispensaries, they are still there.
Yes, the bricks.
Yes, that's
The bricks.
But for the part of lack of maintenance,
Yes.
somebody will prefer to build the gigantic hospital like my brother once referred to sort of improve on their political capital. This government is working. But let me tell you something, I'm happy to hear this morning, and I hope it will not end merely on the propaganda level, as it were, that this present governor of Edo State has promised, or that they have embarked on building primary health care. Because it is from the primary health care in the rural area that perhaps are accessible to the people, that you now start making referrals
On secondary problems and operations.
Secondary and tertiary health facilities.
Because that ought to be the first.
Okay.
This one ought to be the
Last.
The last.
Yeah. In terms of the order or the hierarchy.
If you have a proper
health structure,
on ground,
yeah.
So that when you build from that angle, you see, we have had effective mobile clinic system in this country in the past.
Yeah.
Whereby the health personnel are empowered to reach out to those who cannot narrate.
They can move from one community to another.
So now, coming to the issue of high mortality rate, how has this government woken up to that reality? And how have we been able to do it in the past? And how are we looking at the future? I believe that it's never too late to start. Yeah. Instead of blaming the messenger or even trying to play the ostrich by denying the truth that is inherent in that message, let us sit down now. Let us begin to fight corruption by reducing the amount of money in the less than 5% political elite in this country and even contractors, and putting it where it will serve the interest of the people. If I can tell you now that if they put about 10% of the appropriation every year annually into supporting indigent pregnant women and making sure that if you don't have the means, if you are somebody below a certain level of income and you get pregnant, don't get bothered about it. Government will support you up to an extent. Yeah. When you put that money, that chunk of money from the system, you would have removed the opportunity to steal from that system as well. Yeah. So you don't fight corruption by mere sloganeering. You must find a way to deploy resources. That is why people have also talked about the need to reduce what is available at a particular center and level of government. If you have so much at one level, the tendency to steal will be higher at that level.
Absolutely.
If you take from that place and put where it is mostly there, you have dispersed the fund. You see, look at what has happened in Lagos, using the development area as an example. You see how that has spread. The money coming to Lagos for the federal allocation has not increased in any way, so to speak. But the way it is deployed, instead of going to one center as one local government, is now split between one or two or three local government.
Local development, local council development authority area.
That's the kind of thing we are talking about. It's one strategic way to deal with the evil of corruption that we have in this country. So that coming down again to it is about also identifying those institutions that also train the personnel. Mm-hmm. How much do we put on midwifery? Have you visited the school of midwifery in Edo State?
It's been closed twice.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, what premium do we put in those institutions?
Okay.
So that we will have the best of midwives. Most of them, when they finish schooling here, they go outside the country and they are better encouraged.
Because of the environment, which you talked about, which you talked about a while ago.
So how do we put into those areas that will ensure that when our women get pregnant, they will have the confidence to remain here and deliver here and not craving
to born the American citizen of next tomorrow and the generation yet to come.
All right, thank you very much. If you just joined us, it's TMI Monday. Just extraying the comments made by Bill Gates at the recent visit to Nigeria on the need to focus more on human capital
investment in health and education rather than concentrating on physical infrastructure to the detriment of human capital development. Mr. Gates made the call today on investment in health and education rather than concentrating on physical infrastructure to the detriment
in terms of human capital development. That's the only way we can truly move this country forward. I want to say big thanks to our panelists, Dr. Pedro Basiki, Pastor Friday Good, thank you so much for coming. We'll take a short break now. Chukwuba Mdele will be joining me for our next segment. Don't go away.